Welcome back to the WordPress Custom Post Metabox course. In the last lesson, we took a look at various web server packages that were available for various operating systems. We set one up, we configured it, and then we got ready to install WordPress and configure our development environment. So we'll be continuing with that part of the course in this lesson. By the time it's done, we'll have our development environment set up and ready to begin coding. At this point, we're ready to install WordPress. So let's take a look at what's needed in order to do that. Now, all of the software packages that we've discussed up to this point come with a tool called phpMyAdmin, and this is what's known as a database front end. And a database front end is responsible for giving you access to the database without having to use the command line in order to issue commands to view the data in the database and so on. And you should be able to access it by typing in localhost/phpMyAdmin. And when it loads, you should see something like this, especially depending on the version of phpMyAdmin that ships with your web server. We want to click on Databases. We want to create a database, and we'll call this one Dev Metaboxes, because this is a Metabox course. You do want to remember this is because when it comes time to install WordPress, this is going to be important. So click on Create. And then you should see a success message that says database dev metaboxes has been created. Now I named mine dev metaboxes because I'm in development and we're working with metaboxes in this course. You can feel free to name it whatever you want. At this point, it's time to download and install WordPress. So navigate to wordpress.org, click on download WordPress 3.6, click on download WordPress 3.6 one more time. Once the download is complete, we want to navigate to it in our File Explorer. If you're in Mac, this will be Finder. If you're on Windows, this will be Windows Explorer. And if you're on Linux, this will be whatever file manager you opt to use. We want to extract the files, and you'll see that it writes everything out to the WordPress directory. Now, depending on the nature of your operating system, you may need to do something a little bit different, but I want to set everything up in my www directory. And so in order to do that, I opened up a second Finder window, and you'll notice that there's two files that are already there. These are files that are created by MAMP, so I'm going to delete them. This doesn't harm anything. And then I'm going to literally drag them into www. Now the reason that I do this is because otherwise I will have to go to localhost/WordPress every time I want to access my WordPress installation. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is a few extra keystrokes. I would rather just type localhost and hit my WordPress installation. So from here, let's go back to our web browser and type in localhost. Permitting everything's gone correctly and that you've copied WordPress to the proper directory, you should be greeted with this screen. So what we want to do is create a configuration file. And this will tell you that you need your database name, your username and password, the host, which is localhost, and the table prefix. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So let's click on Let's Go. The database name, remember, is dev metaboxes. The username for MySQL is root, and the password is root as well. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the MySQL username should always be root, regardless of the package that you've installed. And then the password may be empty, it may be root, and it may be something that you've specified. But whatever the case may be, make sure you specify it here. Secondly, the database host should always be localhost because you're installing it here on your local web server. And finally, the table prefix can be left as WP_. This is a convention that's used for prefixing the table, so your post tables would be WP_post and so on. The details of this are outside of the scope of this lesson. So let's click on Submit, and it looks like we are ready to install WordPress. Assuming everything goes well, you should be presented with this screen. Let's go ahead and give the site title Metabox Development. For a username, you can opt to use whatever you want. They always say that, admin is an insecure name. We're in development, so it doesn't matter that much because we're not going to be leaving our machines. But if you migrate this database to a staging server or a production server, please remember to change it. And then go ahead and give yourself a password. And finally, you can specify your email address. As far as allowing search engines to index the site, it doesn't really matter because the site isn't accessible via search engines anyway. But basically, if you're taking a site live, you want this checked because you want Googlebot or Yahoo or Bing to be able to crawl the site. Otherwise, if you want to keep it private, that is, you only want people to access it by URL and it not show up in search engine results, then you can uncheck it. For the time being, I'm going to leave it checked. At this point, I'll click on Install WordPress. After that, you can see that I've been presented with a success message, so I will log in. I will use my username and password that I supplied. And then I'm greeted with the WordPress dashboard. Now we're going to take pause here for just a minute as we're going to set up our IDE. However, we will be coming back to WordPress before the end of the lesson. So simply minimize your browser on the page that it's on, and we'll revisit this in just a moment. Now, as far as IDEs are concerned, this is a divisive topic in the development community because everybody has their favorite IDE. Some used to use Vim, some likes to use Emacs, some like to use Coda, some like to use Visual Studio, and some like to use Notepad or Notepad++. For the purposes of this course, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're able to write PHP, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, you're good to go. However, for the purpose of this course, I'm going to be using Coda, and that's what I'm going to do next. So I will launch Coda, and I will choose to add a new project that I'm going to call Metabox. So I'm going to add a new project that I'm going to call Metabox Development. And I'm doing this because I like the names of my projects to reflect the name of my WordPress installation. I'm not going to be uploading this via FTP or SFTP. So I'm not going to specify a server, username, password, or a root URL, but I will be specifying a local URL, which is of course localhost. Finally, as far as a local root is concerned, I'm going to click on Set. I'm going to go to Documents. Then I'm going to click on www. After that, I'll click Save. I'll give it a moment to process. And then you can see there's a small screenshot here of the default WordPress installation. We're going to take a look at this in just a minute. But first, you can double click into your project, and what you should see is an empty file, as we're not writing any code yet. And then in the right-hand panel, or the left-hand, depending on how you have your IDE configured, you should see a listing of all the files that make up WordPress. Throughout the course, we're going to be working out of the WP content directory, most likely the plugins directory. But we'll get to that later in the course. Now, our IDE is configured, WordPress is installed, and there's just one more thing that we have to take a look at. So let's minimize our IDE and return to our web browser. Next, let's go ahead and change our permalinks. I like to use the post name, so we'll click Save Changes. After that, let's click on Visit Site to make sure that everything still looks good. We should see the 2013 theme. We see the Hello World. And everything looks great. Now, the last thing I want to do in this lesson is load up some test data into WordPress so that we have a variety of posts, comments, authors, etc., and to make it look like it's a full-fledged WordPress installation that's been in use for some time. In order to do that, we'll be using wptest.io. So let's download that. And once it's complete, open it up in your File Explorer, extract the files, and then you'll notice that there is an XML file here. This is the file that we will be importing into WordPress. Next, return to your WordPress dashboard, choose Tools, and go to Import. And what we want is the WordPress importer. So click on that, click on Install Now. And once it's complete, click on Activate Plugin and Run Importer. Next, click on Choose File, navigate to the wp-test-master directory, select the XML file, and click Upload File and Import. This will begin processing all the information in the file. And what we want to do is go ahead and take all of the usernames that are specified and create them as users in the installation. And we do want to download and import file attachments. After this, click on Submit. This will begin the import, and based on your internet connection, this may take a few minutes. But once it's done, you should have a lot of posts, pages, and various media installed. So once it's done, hop back here to the lesson and take a look. Okay, assuming everything went well, you should be presented with this exact screen. So say all done, have fun. So let's click on have fun. We're taken back to the main dashboard. You'll notice that there are 36 posts, 16 pages, 42 categories, 16 tags, 31 comments, all of which are approved. If you want, let's hop back over to the home page of the blog. And you'll notice that we have a menu here, we have content, we have galleries, we have Twitter embeds, we have various images, data, mixed list. We have a whole ton of stuff imported into our WordPress installation that we're able to work with, and it will provide us a great foundation off of which to build throughout the rest of this course. At this point, you should have a web server, database server, PHP, and an installation of WordPress installed. we're ready to begin talking about meta boxes and the WordPress meta box API. So in the next lesson, we'll get exactly into understanding meta boxes, how they work, and how we can begin implementing them using our IDE. Can't wait to see you there, and I look forward to covering the topic.